All right. Hello, folks. Good afternoon, good evening, or possibly good morning, depending on where you are. Welcome to the stream.
Stream number 10, Ted.
Yes. When I was typing that up, it's like, wow, 10.
Yeah, at some point, I guess we'll have to just stop saying the numbers because it just keeps on going.
Monotonically increasing. Hey there, Alex.
Funny how numbers work.
Yeah. All right. So in between last stream and this stream, I was able to find a better way to execute the queries that we wanted.
Excellent.
So
let me just...
Yeah, go ahead and...
Let me bring everybody up to speed on what we're doing. Alex, welcome. What we're doing here is we are creating a adapter for a database, and we're writing narrow integration tests around it, which means that we are writing tests to make sure that the code works the way it's supposed to. But the easy and possibly best way to do that is to write something to the database and then read it back out and say, hey, we got the same thing that we wrote out. We're doing it the hard way, which is not the way that Ted originally implemented this. What we're doing is we're asking Spring Data JPA, Hibernate, to write the code, write the object to the database, and then we are checking the underlying database tables to see what was written. And this is smart and dumb, depending on your perspective. If you're just using the database as a dumb data store, as a sort of opaque black box, then it's overkill. But if you are trying to make assertions about exactly how the data is stored in the database, then there's value. And that's the scenario that we're sort of pretending to be following here, is that we do care what tables are being written to the database, and so we're going to control it. We're going to say that there are people who have the ability to do arbitrary queries against the database. Maybe there's business intelligence stuff going on or something like that, of our massive data lake full of yacht games. And when that happens, you care about not only the schema, but people do tend to write stuff to the database that is not correct. So what we'll be able to do after we get the writes working, we'll do the loads, and we will be able to start looking at how does it handle corrupted data. So that's the value of doing this at sort of the low level, but it's a lot more work, as we saw last time, and not necessarily worth it if you can just treat your database as a black box.
I think once you get where we are now, which is we can write native queries very easily within transactions, it's actually not a lot of work. I think a lot of it is sometimes figuring out how you can go deeper than all the magic that's provided to get at the tables.
Well, and that's why I like going deep, because it's such a struggle to get past that magic. But once you get past it, it's basically done. Right. I was watching the recording as I was editing it together from last week. The recordings are up at jameshore.com/s/nullables-livestream. And it was really only an hour where we were banging our head against the wall, which, in the grand scheme of things, when I'm dealing with magic, I will waste a lot more than an hour trying to figure out why something isn't working. And
one of the downsides I realized of streaming is sometimes it's hard to take that brain break. Because the stream ended, and I think not much later I figured out what to do. But I sometimes need to take that brain break of do something completely different and then try it again. So yeah. Hey, Sweegie. All right, 6 months. Thanks for the resub.
Nice. Oh, that reminds me. I said last week that I was working on a training course for Nullables. And I'm very happy to say that training course is now up and active. You can get to it by going to jameshore.com/s/nullables-training. So if you're interested in a live instructor-led course about how to use these Nullables in your own code, check that out.
This chat. There it goes. There's the detail, info, and links for you.
Excellent. Thanks, Ted.
And as I've been mentioning, I'm in less than 10 days. I'm doing a TED Talk. Not a real TED Talk, but I'm Ted, and I'm going to be talking. So I'm going to be talking about.
I still love that your command is TED Talk. That's great.
Had to do it. So I'll be speaking at the Philly XP remote meetup group on February 16th about testable code, about basically a lot of the stuff we've been talking about here on the stream with James. And I've basically been reworking my presentation to be a bit more expansive, and now I got to figure out if I can still fit it in an hour.
Yeah, that's always a challenge, isn't it? Yeah. I will go through these phases where I'll say I'm going to give a talk, and I'm like, what am I going to talk about? And then I start figuring it out. I'm like, well, how am I not going to talk about everything?
Yes,
right? And how do I make it actually fit?
Yeah.
Because of course people want to be able to ask questions too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I want to hear the questions. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I look forward to seeing that talk. For folks in the Portland area, I'm giving a talk this Wednesday. It's on my website. Just go to jamesshore.com and click the events link. And that is going to be on FAST, fluid scaling technology, which is a really innovative approach to, well, working with multiple teams, large numbers of people working on the same product. And it's a lightning talk, so it's just going to be 10 minutes, maybe 15. I've been told I have up to 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it's in person here in the Portland area in Beaverton or online. And again, if you go to the calendar page on my website, the events page on my website, you can find out more information.
Swede asked about when I'll be reopening my Learn Hexagonal Architecture course. If you attend the Philly XP talk, you'll get a bit of a discount, but I'll be opening it up in a couple of weeks, or I guess in time for that Philly XP. And if you're interested in that, so this is a relaunch of a course. I had opened it up back in August and then closed it while I've been working on it. So that'll reopen. I guess I should change the command. But you can go to r2ha.com, refactoring to hexagonal architecture, and sign up, and you'll be notified when the course reopens.
Nice.
So that's a self-paced video course with exercises and office hours and stuff like that. So good stuff.
Fantastic.
All right. Now that we've got our commercial messages out of the way.
Yeah. Stay tuned for a word from our sponsor,
yes.
Which is us.
Which is us.
We've met the sponsor, and he is us. So, what did you learn in the after your brain break?
Yeah. So what I learned was Entity Manager has this create native query, and I was really kind of like, we had looked at some methods on Entity Manager, and I think we had just overlooked this particular one. Because we had looked at
emailed me telling me that you found this link, and I when I edited the video after I got that email, and I was like, and I saw it, and we just scrolled past it. Like,
and I was like,
I think we even create query, create native query, and we even said, that looks promising, and then we kept going, and we looked at some other ones, and we never came back. To create query. So
it turns out that was the simple answer, and so now we can do a select star. What we get back is really a little awkward to work with, but not horrible. I mean,
so it's not a result set.
It's not a result set. List. It's not even like a map of some sort. It's basically a list of object arrays, and so and that's why I call it game rows here. It's a list. So the list is the rows, and the columns are basically an object array. And so the combination of sort of two awkward things.
And that doesn't allow us to see what the column names are, does it?
No, it does not. And I was looking around to try and figure out how to do that, and I didn't see anything obvious. So it may be there somewhere, but
I'm not a database expert, but we could probably query the database and have it tell us what the schema for the game table is, right? Have it tell us what the column names are.
Yeah, you can definitely do a query against the catalog, the schema. How worth it that is, I'm not sure.
It's sort of an open question for me too.
I'm not sure if it's well defined that if you do a select star, you'll get the columns in any particular order. It's usually by schema, but I'm not sure if that's like a requirement.
I don't know that it's worth it. I think if I were doing this myself for real, I would want to make sure that the tables had exactly what I wanted and nothing more. In which case I would say this is the structure of the table.
Right.
But since we don't know what select star is going to give us in terms of order, I think I'd probably just put in the column names and select in the query there and call it good.
Yeah, and like so that's what Suiji mentions, and it doesn't, if you only use the columns that you specify, it doesn't tell you that there aren't others, as you said. And if we did care, we could select against the schema, but I think we'll leave that. I think we'll leave that as homework for somebody to do.
An exercise, exercise for the viewer.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, Suiji mentioned it. I wasn't looking at the chat. Thanks for that, Suiji.
So so where the code is now, I've asserted that we got 3 columns, and this is weird. So it turns out, I haven't figured out what's going on here. So we can say in the first row we expect these things, except the test fails.
Oh,
and it's because there's so I'll show you what it is. And I didn't have I was running it before, and it's like, wait, what? Because I was testing the individual columns and it all worked. But then we get this, like 1 was not expected, but 1 was there, and it's like, wait a second.
So that to me looks like a object type issue.
Yes, that's what I suspected, but I wasn't sure. I didn't want to dig too deep, because if we do it just the old-fashioned way of dereferencing it through the array syntax. It is a big integer. Oh, that's why. Because it's a
64-bit int.
Because it stored it as a long. That's interesting that it decided to do it that way. Okay, well then that makes sense. So we can do.
So I do like the I do like the developer experience of asserting that the row contains exactly these values.
Yeah, if that's the way we want to go, it's not terrible, or maybe it's a little terrible. So we can do big integer. Hey, we could do 1, but we can be more and say value of, and that probably will work. And then that succeeds.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So so we can go this way. We could always, so something that came up in a recent ensemble based on something you had said previously around refactoring and building up sort of abstractions for testing. And so, that's something that we could decide. Maybe this object stuff is really just really far too awkward, and we could write some conversions, but
I think as we write more tests, we'll probably want to factor something out.
Yeah.
Can we do an assert that the game rows is a list of lists? Can we say it contains exactly a list of lists? Or a list of arrays?
Well, here I'm asserting that there's 1 element in the list, so it's 1 row.
Right. I guess what I'm asking is, with the assertions that you currently have, can we do that as a one-liner?
Do this as a one-liner?
Let me type a little bit.
What are you getting at?
Yeah. So let's see. So what I'm imagining.
Oh, I see.
Blah, blah, blah. I'll let you take it from there.
Probably. So let's see. We would do. No, we'll do that. It might be a better way to do it. Yeah, that doesn't help. So I think that... Yeah, that works.
Yeah. Yeah, so that allows us to basically get rid of everything else in the test, because now it's going to be exactly the right size. It's going to be exactly the right number of columns.
Right. And we can see if, so that should fail.
Because we'll say it expected a true but didn't get it.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect.
All right.
It is in a different order than I would have expected.
It is. Because the order is not the field definition. It is the order of your getters and setters.
Of course. I mean, what else could it be?
Well, I mean, if you think about how it's getting it and it's using reflection to find getter methods, then that makes sense.
No, I agree. It does make sense.
But it is confusing. So maybe I should do that to make it at least match the getters and setters.
Let's actually, let's just put the column names in the select statement.
Yeah.
It does mean that now that there could be additional columns that we're not validating, but
right.
Again,
that's a trade-off.
Yeah. And this is where I probably would put in a, select from the catalog what the column names are for the game table, games table. Suiji, it does make sense if you understand how the magic works. The problem is with magic is it's great when you understand every little detail of it. Yeah. It's just that most people don't, like we didn't last time. So that's going to be, you put it in the same order.
Yeah.
And then I probably would put that in the same order as our construction. Otherwise, I know that I will get confused at some point. If you scroll up to where we're creating the game snapshot.
Right, the snapshot. So let's permute those.
Well, I was just going to say change the select statement to match the snapshot rather than the
I don't know. I'm always like, I like ID up front.
Well, the ID isn't provided in the snapshot.
Oh, right.
Anyway.
So the ID isn't. So let's just swap these. I see. Okay, let's do that. Yeah. Let's check signature. So we want.
Actually, yeah, I think it does kind of make sense for the roles to come before the round completed flag anyway.
Yeah. So roles, round completed, and then the rest of the stuff. Okay. Yep.
And then in the game table, that's the order that things are in.
Yep.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, I think we've faffed out around long enough.
Yep.
Let's add another column.
Yeah. So the current hand, I actually tried the only suggestion that I could find, which is a types library for Hibernate, and I couldn't get it to work. And so I followed. Usually, Vlad's stuff is good. For some reason, there's something I'm missing, and the JDBC driver couldn't recognize that type, even though it was supposed to work out of the box. So we
can't even blame the magic for that because it's happening at the JDBC level.
Level. So we have a couple of choices. One is we could let it create another table for us to store it in, or we could manually pack it into a string and parse it ourselves.
So I think this is a great example of how when you're doing any sort of coding, if you've got good access to your stakeholders, you can be like, do you want us to spend 3 days solving this problem?
Right.
Or can we just do X?
Right.
And since we're the stakeholders here, I think we say, let's not spend 3 days solving this problem. Let's just do it the way it does naturally. And I kind of like the idea of using like just whatever the native Hibernate solution here would be, which I think is a separate table.
Yeah. So,
oh, well, do I like that? It feels like such overkill to have a separate table.
It does.
Let's just pack it into a string.
So,
also, related to this, I feel like current hand should be a current hand rather than a list. Or are you going to just give it a string?
I was, but tell me more what you were thinking.
Well, this was a conversation I was going to have later
Oh,
after we got this working.
okay.
But there's this question of, do we want the game table snapshot to be primitives, or do we want it to be value objects?
Yes.
And I think I kind of like the idea of it being value objects, but part of the value of doing things with adapters is that it provides that anti-corruption layer.
Right.
So that we can change the underlying types without breaking things in the future.
Right.
So I think let's go ahead and have it as a string, and we'll pass in the pack. We'll do the packing outside, but in the future, I think I'm inclined to change that to be a value object. But that's a whole nother design conversation that we can have later.
Yeah, and I've been thinking a lot about that as I've been sort of tweeting and thinking about what this pattern is, and so like where that mapping happens, who's responsible for it, the trade-offs of anti-corruption versus ease of use, and all that kind of things. Yeah, all sorts of great questions there. Yeah. So that means our game table.
I don't, the more I look at this though, I don't love the idea of doing the packing, because that is fundamentally a database representation, right? So if we create a snapshot and it doesn't have exactly the right representation, things are going to break. So it feels to me like the game table has a string, but the game database.
Right, so the snapshot would still have the list. So
okay,
somewhere here we'd have to, when we the game table. I don't know what the common ways of doing it, but we could basically override or change the getter setter to do the packing for us. I don't
think that's necessary, because the game table is effectively private to GameDatabase, and GameDatabase is taking a snapshot. So it can just be GameDatabase. When it adds things to the table, it can do the packing.
Oh, right, of course. Right, yes. Yeah. Sorry, I was actually thinking of something else, so I confused myself. Yeah, so here when we do the save game, this will obviously not work. Why is it? Did I not?
So we need to finish the test first.
Oh, yeah, because we didn't write anything yet. Okay.
Right.
So what we want now, so we're going to have current hand here, not catalog.
So, Luigi, I think we addressed the question you were just asking, but let me know if you're thinking differently.
And then we want, pull this onto separate lines. And so what we want here, this is going to be, we're going to get with this, it's going to be the string. So
yeah,
I'm assuming comma separated.
Yeah, you've already got some sort of,
yeah.
See, that's another reason to use the current hand, because it's already got the packing logic built into it, right? Or the hand of dice, I think is what it's called.
And
I know you're doing this packing somewhere.
I'm doing it, I think, in a view adapter.
Oh, okay.
So somewhere I'm doing that as a view adapter. We can find it when we need it.
Yeah.
All right. So let me also. And so this is not my Discord. Okay, so that's null for now. Okay, so we expect this to fail with some exception around. Well, we added the column. Maybe we do that too soon.
No, I think this.
So this will succeed, but then this will fail because it won't.
Right.
It will be null.
Yeah, it'll be undefined in some way, right?
I'm assuming null since we never set it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. Did you add the, I wasn't looking, did you add the accessor for
Yes.
get and set current
Yeah.
hand?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
All right. So now we want to make a pass. So now roles are uncompleted. So here we're going to have set current hand, and that's going to be the snapshot current hand. Well, converting 2 is really easy.
Just toString, right? Or
No,
toString will give us all kinds of debug information.
Yeah, so we can basically do stream joining. What is it?
Mhm.
String joiner. Ugh, I swear every time. Joining. That's the one. In fact, it's pretty much that. Which we should probably.
Yeah, Suigi says collect and join.
I always forget where the joining is because there's a different way of doing it that uses something else. Stream map value of, yep. I think that'll. So side note, normally I'd be like anything that got like this quote sophisticated or prone to error, I would probably write a test for it. But
yeah, well, technically we have.
But this is sufficient.
But yeah, this to me, this is really streaming. You have a value object here that you're not, that you should be using.
Yeah. All right, test passes.
Okay, so now let's do the next one, which I believe is the scoreboard.
Yes, so the scoreboard. So the question is, how do we want to persist that? So our scoreboard.
Yeah, so I actually
snapshot. Yeah.
I wonder. I think that we actually have a second test here. I think we should, because this is going to get complicated.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the first test should be something like writes, basic data, writes scalar data to database, and or even writes scalar game data to database. I don't know if scalar is the best word, but
I think it's just core game state
to database. Yeah. And then a second one, which is writes the scoreboard to the database.
And so then we're going to do the same thing here. And here we're going to do scoreboard.
And did you confirm when you were doing your experiments with Create Native Query that we weren't going to have any leftover data from the first test?
Yes, because it's basically all the transaction stuff is now as it was, so it's no longer turned off. I'm gonna have to rename that. Okay. So I'm renaming it right now. Really? I've decided on a different term, but for now I just want to be consistent with the other.
I think snapshot's nice. I do have another way that we could do this that once this is done will be easy. Like the nice thing about doing the test this way is that we can refactor to our heart's content and the test won't break. So when we're done with this, if we decide to do, the snapshots differently, or if we want to do something more memento-like, we should be able to do that refactoring really easily.
Let's see. So what do we want here? We want score category scores and
I forget, does the scoreboard store the score or the hand?
It stores the hand.
Okay.
And so this is a list of, list of.
Okay, I think we need to stop.
Yeah.
we've got this core concept of a hand of dice. We have got to start using it. We're gonna be repeating ourselves all over the place.
So do we want to do, we could do hand of dice and then of.
Yep.
And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. Or something like that.
No, I think just hand of dice. Let's just use the value object.
So you're thinking change it to use a value object for the snapshot instead of using the list of.
Yeah. So you remember how you asked me to give you an image with my A-frame architecture on it? So let's pop that up for a moment.
Voila.
Ta-da! Look at this. It's not quite as sexy as this is, but it's easier to read. So yeah, the values layer, it's not really a layer. It's just, I don't want to use primitives in my code if I can avoid it. I want I want to follow the once and only once principle, which is that every concept needs one place to have it.
Yep.
And data types are fundamentally the core concepts in our code.
Right.
And that's what the values layer is for. So for me, whenever I'm using a primitive, that's the primitive obsession code smell, and I'm thinking, what is the underlying value type here? And once you have those values, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, Ted, so just for everybody who's listening, once you have that value type, then all kinds of stuff goes into it, like this idea of how do we turn it into a string. That will go there. We will stop repeating ourselves on that. It will just be part of the concept of how a hand of dice can be rendered out to a string, or effectively serialized. So the fact that we're using a list of everywhere, which is effectively a primitive type, although technically it's not.
Yeah. So the term I use is unconstrained type. So that way it captures that, because it is an unconstrained type. Sometimes raw is also another term I've used, but unconstrained is like, look, there's no constraints here. There's no domain knowledge being embedded in it. It's just could be anything.
It's that domain knowledge.
Yeah.
I don't consider value types to be more constrained than the raw data, although it technically is. I think the distinction is that value types represent something in the domain in the way that the unconstrained types don't.
Right.
So maybe that's what you mean by unconstrained. But a hand of dice means that we're talking about an actual hand of dice.
Right.
A list means, well, it could mean anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we've gotten to the point now that we're seeing that list of show up multiple times. We actually probably should just switch things over to use hand of dice rather than a list.
So if we do use hand of dice, that should be what we store in the snapshot. So that's what we're saying. Okay. So then let's start here.
And I actually kind of want to change the game snapshot to use a hand of dice as well.
Do you want to do that first, or do you want to do the scoreboard?
I would be inclined to do it first, because who knows what kind of complexity adding the scoreboard is going to bring.
So let's over some of the usages. I haven't done much refactoring with records. Let's do this. Let's go here. And we want to change this to hand of dice.
I think that's fine.
So if we do it this way, it's going to cause a bunch of things to break. Well, basically anybody who's passing in a list of integer right now.
But there's not a lot of people doing that, right? Because we're barely using the snapshot anywhere.
It's used in a few places. So it's used in the game itself. and then in a couple of other places. Not a lot, but
Yeah, so Suiji suggests that we commit, which is probably a smart idea.
yeah. So let's do that.
That's probably what I would do, would be to commit, YOLO it, fail, and then roll back. That's just me.
So let's see.
Yeah, Corm, we could say that we, not just that, but we successfully store all the core game state.
Well, some core.
Yeah.
Just to be clear. All right. So
yeah, the main reason this is going to be an issue is because we still have all your original sort of spike style code. Not really a spike, but you know what I mean.
Yep.
And this will possibly break all of that.
oops.
So that's a good sign.
Okay. So this is the other way around. And this would be equal to actually let me run all the tests.
That wasn't bad at all.
That was actually not too bad. Okay. All right.
Yeah. And it looks like so in our game database, how is it writing? Oh, go ahead and finish this thought.
Okay. All right. What was your question?
Yeah. So in the game database, so we are still doing the stream and the map and the collect. So this is the point at which I want to move this logic into Hand of Dice and write a test around it.
So I'm curious, you push this serialization, which is specific to a concrete way of persisting, you push that into the value object?
I would, yeah.
So if you switch databases where it actually becomes easy to store this in as an array, you would have to go change your value object?
Yeah, I mean, when you put it that way, it does sound... So what I don't love is it's exposing the stream out of the value object. I want it to... This is sort of law of Demeter-esque, and so it's very much a design gut feel rather than a than a hard and fast, this is the right thing versus this is the wrong thing.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, I asked because this is something I struggle with and go back and forth, and it's so Stream for me is the sort of the it's still providing higher level, although it's returning integers. It could return die rolls, but we haven't wrapped the integers in any kind of value object to represent die rolls, which is something that we could do. But that Stream is still at a domain level to a certain extent. It's a query method because you have to have some way of saying I need access to those die rolls.
Except I prefer my value objects not to provide access to their insides.
So how do you present them then? So if you had
what I would do is I make my value objects support type conversion. And so I might say to serializable string or something like that, and from serializable string. And that will be a consistent format that knows to write something out and read something in this case with commas or spaces or whatever. And then if the database later changed to be supporting an array, I would add to array or to whatever. And if that means that to serializable string is no longer used anywhere in my code base, I would delete it. But if it was still used in my code base, I would just have both. So that's how I sort of resolve this conundrum. And the proof I have that this is the right place, the value object is the right place to put it, proof is a little bit strongly worded, is that one, we want to have tests around this. And these tests are not about serialization. These tests are about the database. So writing a test of how the serialization happens means that we'd have to write a test that puts stuff in the database, ignores the fact that, and then looks at the table and says, well, here's the data we're getting out. Whereas writing the same test on the value object means we'd make the value object, we'd say serialize it to a string or to serializable string or whatever, and then we'd look at the string that came back. It would be a much more direct test. And the other half of it is that when we do the scoreboard, we're going to be doing the same serialization. So now we need to have that centralized somewhere. Where do we put it? On the value object seems like the right spot. Or we have a private method inside of GameDatabase. And then third,
all right, that's third.
You're doing it already. In another part, you said you're doing it in the view adapter, which to me says that there should be a central place for it. The concept is a hand of dice. The hand of dice concept should have everything related to that concept.
So it turns out, and Sweegie brings up the point that I wanted to bring up, is it turns out that when we display it on the screen, I don't use a comma-separated serialization. I need to know the individual die contents, and this is what Stream is. So to put it the way you were talking about, Stream really here is to serializable stream. That's really what the Stream method means, or to stream, or whatever you want to call it. It's basically putting it in an intermediate format that you can then comma separate for database, as names of image files for the UI, as an array for sending over an API. And for me, the conversions to the concrete thing happen in the adapter.
Yeah. I am deeply suspicious of generic code. So yes, Stream can be used for anything, but that's not what we need right now. What we need is to convert it to a string, and I'd like to have a method that just does that.
So I'd put that in. If it was specifically for the database, then to me that would be code somewhere, perhaps as a static method, somewhere in the database code. So for me, I'm uncomfortable putting infrastructure specific code, even though
it's not infrastructure. It's not infrastructure specific. It is converting the hand of dice to a string. That happens to only be used by our infrastructure.
Well, but in a specific way, though, no?
Yeah, no. I mean, I hear you.
Okay.
I think there's an argument to be made because, to play devil's advocate here, if we were to change that to serializable string format, that would break the database code. and would be a bad thing, and that's a sign that that's actually not the right place for it.
Yeah.
So again, this is the this is sort of a gut feel thing. I don't think there is a right answer here. What I don't like, though, is that we're doing the stream logic on line 24 on the right.
Oh, I agree with that. I agree that that's clearly needs to be refactored and put somewhere. So I think we just disagree where that goes.
Well, I think a static method on GameDatabase is fine. So let's write a test around that and factor that out. But I think what we're going to see here is that we're going to see some feature envy, in that we're going to have a static method that says, given a hand of dice, convert it to this thing, and it's not going to be about the database at all. Other than it's the format the database wants.
Well, it's specific to the database because it's how we want to store it in the database. So I would put it in a hand of dice transformer that lives inside of lives next to where the database is, takes a hand of dice and converts it to a string.
So another file.
Yeah, and because my concern would be, and I think you just mentioned this, is if we decide to change that, because maybe commas are awkward or something like that, and we need to change that, wherever else I happen to, right? So this is all, for me, it's all about, what is this conceptual duplication, or is it just happens, or is it sort of coincidental duplication? And I think the current duplication that, where I copied the code from is just coincidental.
I think one of the ways that we are different is that I prefer to have fewer files when possible. Because when I'm trying to learn a code base, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at all the files and try to understand what they are. So I will tend to have fewer numbers of larger files than large numbers of small files, and I want the files, everything that's related to the file, to be in the same place. So I'd be fine having this code on hand of dice. I'd be fine having it on GameDatabase. I really don't love the idea of yet another file that's going to have one method in it just to do that transformation.
All right. Well, then we'll agree to disagree on that one.
All right.
So let's see. This is going to take... Let's factor this out. So this is 2... And that's too high level. What we actually want is this.
The other reason I'm not worried about putting this in hand of dice, Suiji, is because we do have the tests of the database that test that it's being serialized properly. If we're only testing save and load, then it could change its format out from under us without us realizing it. But because we're testing the way it's serialized, if the hand of dice was ever changed by somebody accidentally, the GameDatabase test would fail. Which is the advantage of using sociable tests, is if you make a change that affects code somewhere else in the system, your test will break. So if we're going to put this on GameDatabase, it shouldn't be called toSerializable string. It should be called, well, we are passing the hand of dice.
So I usually do something like that. Serializable string of.
Yeah, that works for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think toSerializable, to say hand of dice dot.
No, I wrote it thinking we'd move it and realized that no, it's staying here. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So where are we? We've done that. We've factored this out.
So I still want a test of that serializable string of. I kind of want a test of it. I mean, we do have it implicitly tested by the rest of our code. Yeah, no, I think it's fine. That's
what I was talking about before, when I was like, if for anything non-trivial, and especially stuff like this, it looks trivial, but you can always get it wrong. And it's like, does it have a trailing comma? Does that matter? And things like that. Yeah, right. So generally, when I pull these out into transformer classes, so in my adapters in hexagonal, I have a series of these transformer classes, and that's their job, is to convert entities and value objects into the form that's used by whatever however it's leaving the adapter, whether it's a database or a third party. And generally, I'll test those because sometimes there's some non-trivial transformations going on.
Yeah, and I basically use value objects for the same purpose. It's just all the transformations that a value object needs will be on the value object.
Yeah.
And some of them are specific to the way they're being used, but because they're tested, I'm not worried about that being changed inappropriately.
All right, so that's there. Now we want to go change the scoreboard one. So let's go. So we wanted this.
I think the issue.
Oh, this one needs to be a map. This one's different. It's the contents of it's this part that's different. So,
yeah, that's a map of the score categories to a list of integers. That should probably be a hand of dice too, right?
Yes. I was just checking that.
So, Suiji, I think the issue with the database is different because you had mentioned that the UI might, or the issue with the UI is different than the issue with the database. Because you had talked about the UI might wanting to display actual like images of dice or something like that. The fact that it's showing it as a string of space separated values right now is very much a UI concern. And I think you could argue that what we're doing here is very much a database concern. So what's the difference? I like one and I don't like the other. It doesn't, I don't think it makes any sense at all for a hand of dice value object to return a list of images, for example. So in that case, what I would do is I would just have the streaming approach the way Ted does. It's exactly what I would do. Or at a simple array, maybe 2 array is what I would use. The something I have done in the past is I've put an interface on my value objects that said render, and you'd pass in a renderer target, and the UI would provide that render target. And that was very pure from a design perspective, but awfully complicated and didn't add a lot of value from an actual like usability perspective. What you looking at here, Ted?
So I've got my old DBO stuff that assumes the snapshots have a list of integers, and so I'm just trying to figure out where that conversion happens. So this is from from entry is wrong. That's where it is. So this is still hand of dice, but this is now stream to list. And this to domain, so
so you need to convert the map from the.
So this is. I should change the type first. So actually that was wrong.
Yeah, that's the wrong way. It needs to go from a list to the.
So let's see. So this is.
That's going to be your list.
That's my list, and so I need to hand it back up right the other way.
Yeah, so that's just the hand of dice now.
There we go. Hold on. And this is that. All right. Commit. Let's convert it forward. All right. All right. So anything else, or should we go back to writing the scoreboard test?
Let's rename that from serializable string of to persistable string of.
Ooh.
I was just thinking about, if I was doing this as a value object, what would I do? It wouldn't be too serializable string because that's too generic. It'd be too persistable string. And then
the other way I might do it is as persistable and leave off string, because string is obvious as the type.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. As persistable. Persistable of. Yeah, as persistable is nice.
Do we want to take a break before we start on this test? Time flies.
Yeah, time flies. Let's take our break.
All right, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll start writing that test.
All right, see y'all soon.
All right, and we're back.
Okay. So we have this as persistable. I think we're ready to.
Yeah, we're
using it. Yeah. So
we can just do that, and I think that's it.
Nice. Yeah, that feels a lot better to me.
All right.
So we are going to need to make the game snapshot as well, but we won't care about any of the other rows or any of the other fields.
Okay. So it doesn't matter what we put here. So this will be our...
So I'm going to tell you about something I do that some people are going to really, really dislike. I have this pattern in my testing without mocks pattern language called what do I call it? I should know the name for this. Let me look it up. Oh yeah, it's called parameterless instantiation. And it's for situations like this where we're creating data and we don't actually care about the results. So like creating a new hand of dice. So what I do, and a lot of people use helper methods for this sort of thing, but in the name of liking to keep stuff that's related to each other close together, in the name of cohesion, I will typically make in those cases where it does not make sense to construct it with no data, I will create a method, a static method, a factory method called create test instance or for test only or something like that.
Yep.
And it will take the parameters as optional values and then provide defaults for all the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know what you think about that. I think that's something that would turn a lot of people off, but it's something I found handy. It doesn't happen that often. Actually, I don't tend to have that many domain objects that require data. Mm-hmm. But when you do have them, it's handy, especially when you're talking about stuff that like an address that then has a state, which then, or a postal code, and just goes on and on.
Right.
When you're doing these value objects that have value objects embedded in them that have value objects embedded in them, it's really nice to be able to just say create test instance and go for it.
I'm 100% behind you on that, because one of the things that I talk a lot about in when I'm teaching testing is reduce or increase signal to noise. Like in Java, there's going to be a certain amount of noise, just because of the syntax and so on, and requirements of parameters, and not easily to have optional things. But as much as possible, I want to either refactor certain things away as constants. So I might, I have to pass in a string here, but it's meaningless. So I'll refactor that as a constant. I'll call it dummy, whatever it is. And I would generally say here, this is not useful information. It's not, or it's in this specific scenario, it is irrelevant for this test. And therefore that's where I consider it noise. And therefore I would find some way to refactor to either some creation method or some other mechanism. Usually when it starts building up and you have lots of classes working together, and there's a lot of, I just need some good defaults, that's when I'll introduce a test data builder.
Yeah, so there's two aspects to this. One is the helper method in the test, and then the other is the static factory in the production code that's create test instance.
Right.
I have a lot of patterns or a lot of things that I do that I really don't bother me, like having, for example, the nullables and the embedded stub. I found enough production uses for that code that it doesn't bother me. Introducing a factory method that's purely for creating test instances, that still bugs me a little bit. But it makes everything else so much easier. And I don't like creating test helper classes. I want the things that are related to each other to be close together. It's much simpler to deal with having a factory method next to my other factories than have a whole separate file buried somewhere that nobody's ever going to look at or find. I'm sure we've all seen the case where a utility method exists and people forget about it and they just start replicating that code over and over again.
Yeah, and that can be an issue with test data builders. Although in my experience, it's not a problem because I see people with the opposite problem of copying way too much from existing tests in order to say, oh, I need this, and then they copy a whole bunch of stuff. It's less about they can't find it and more it's like stop copying and pasting. But discoverability is certainly an issue. I would probably I'm okay with sort of constructors or static factory methods that are for tests but are very explicit. When it starts getting more complex, when I would introduce a test data builder, I think the test data builder would live in the test area.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that we do differently is you tend to have multiple files testing the same class, and I will just have one, but it will be a much longer file than you. So
that's just me.
The test helper just goes in the same test file, and then it's not a problem.
Yeah, and honestly, discoverability of those things I haven't found to be a problem because most people, at least in Java, in the Java world, it doesn't seem to be an issue because they're usually looking at other tests and they say, oh, there's a builder, or it's literally like it's right there in the hierarchy, along with it. And so where it can get out of hand though is if you do have a lot of test classes that are building on the same thing. But for me, the only reason I do a lot of test classes is to poke people, saying if you've got like 5 or 8 different test classes for a single core object, like it's not cohesive anymore and you need to split that thing apart. So I'm not, that's one of the things where it's like, hey, you want to put it all in one big class. I have no problem with that. I'm always looking for ways to, because of what I see in the field is just classes that are way too big.
Yeah. No, and I think ultimately design is about, I want to say 2 things. I want to say that it's about, can people understand the code? Because of course the computer doesn't care. Can people understand the code when they're looking at, can they find the thing they're looking for? Can they see how everything fits together? And this is why I don't like magic, because it makes it hard to see how everything fits together. I don't like creating magic, right? And then the other thing is, because we're dealing with people whose default behavior is I've got a feature to write and I'm going to find something that's similar and copy that. How can I have the design push people in the direction of correctness?
Yeah.
What can I do to make it a little bit harder to do the wrong thing and a little bit easier to do the right thing? And that's why things like Stream, which suck out the data, that I know that people are going to see that and say, well, I want to do this thing. And they're not going to look for how it's already been done. They're just going, well, I'm just going to suck out the data and operate on it. Right. You see that all over the place.
Yeah.
But the behavior you're talking about where by default, you don't have to worry about people finding these test data helpers, for example, because they are just going to copy an existing test. That rings very true to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. Like in general, I want my classes to be as well encapsulated as possible and not reveal information if they don't have to. The stream here, I do agree the name could be much more expressive, and that's probably something I'll change. But so one of the things that I found as a trade-off, and this is more in a hexagonal architecture, is domain purity versus it's purity in the sense of no IO versus encapsulation.
Yeah.
And I'd rather have it pure and be slightly less encapsulated than the other way around, because I've done the other way and I don't like it.
Yeah.
But it's for me, it's like one of the most frustrating trade-offs.
The pendulum swings for me. Right now, I think I'm closer to your position than anything else. Originally, of course, I just did layered architecture. That's what I originally learned. And I did layered architecture, and then that was a problem because your tests are so hard to write and to manage. And then I swung way back in the other direction. I figured out a way to have pure domain objects that were also tightly encapsulated. And that's where there was this render target and renderable. My value objects had a renderable interface, and that took a render to and then render target. Right. Like it was pure. Like it was so pure. But did it really add anything? Because when I ported that same code to JavaScript and I didn't have any types, I was like, wait, what? I'm just wanking here. There's no there. Yeah. And so I just turned back to basically doing a stream. Now, and that was before I started using Nullables. One thing that Nullables has given me, and I think, Steve Freeman asked me, when you've got millions of people using your technique, how are they going to screw it up? That's not what he said, but basically he's like, well, you're criticizing mocks, but you're not really criticizing mocks. You're criticizing how everybody misuses it. Yes. Which I say, yes, I am. Granted. And then his response was, well, good luck when everybody starts using this. Right. And how is it going to fail? And so I think when Nullables fail, the way they're going to fail is that it makes it really easy to write code that domain logic that does depend on the IO, because you can write your test of it. It's not painful like it is now. But because it's not painful, I am swinging a little bit back towards making my domain logic less pure. Yeah. I haven't started doing that yet, but it's been niggling around in my head for a little while. Like, well, actually, I don't have to make my domain logic pure. What would I do? And of course, my A-frame architecture is all about keeping those really tightly separated. Right. So I don't know. I'm constantly exploring new ideas and new design approaches. Yeah. But ultimately, what it's about is my entire career has been, when I was really learning design, just hacking stuff together and then finding out that I couldn't keep it all in my brain and not being able to understand everything. And then making things as pure as possible and building these elaborate castles in the sky, and then realizing that made stuff really difficult. And then from there, it's been just a steady progression of how can I be less pure, and simpler and simpler and simpler and simpler. And the consequence of that has been code that actually looks more like it's hacked together, but is simpler than the pure stuff. So I guess what I'm saying is that there are no sacred cows. Like I will break any rules if it makes the code easier to understand.
So Suiji asks about opinions on using extension methods for languages that have that in terms of the as persistable and so on. I personally don't have enough experience with such languages, so I don't have an opinion.
I've done a fair amount with C# and .NET, which does have that sort of thing. And I hate it. Discoverability is a thing.
Yeah.
People are going to spend way more time working with code that they've never seen before than code that they have seen before. And so, which is why I like to have fewer files, as long as they're tightly cohesive and the concepts in those files are coupled. Because when you're going into a code base that you've never seen before, you need to be able to look at something and understand how it works as a unit and how it fits into the overall system. When you have extension methods, which are basically a way of taking a single file and splitting it into multiple files, often in completely different directories,
Yeah.
then you get this question, well, it's calling this method. Where is that method defined? Where does it come from? How does it get there? And you can find it in your IDE, but it just makes everything more confusing.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of aspect-oriented programming, which was this huge big thing when it first came out, and my big question was, okay, but how do I find it? How do I see it?
And that's what repository and AutoWired are. That's basically aspect-oriented programming. All these interfaces all these annotations are aspect that came from aspect-oriented programming.
Well, yeah, and they use AOP, and this is what drives me crazy is a lot of classes on Spring teach AOP explicitly really early on, and I'm like, look, that's an implementation detail, and yes, we can get to that, and we can then, but how about we just get some stuff done, then we can start understanding what the magic is. But allowing sort of user programmer define, like, I'm going to write my own AOP stuff, so stuff automatically logs, and then it's just not discoverable.
It's not discoverable. And it's the kind of thing advanced beginners, people with senior titles with about 5 years of experience love this kind of stuff because it feels really smart. Like, I'm in the advanced stuff now. Now I can do stuff, I can write code nobody can understand. That kind of stuff, it feels really good to write, but then you deal with the consequences of it. You start running into code that other people have written. You start running into code that you wrote that you can no longer understand. And you have people who maybe are even more senior than you coming onto your project saying, what is this? I don't understand it.
Right.
And you realize what a disaster it is. Discoverability is everything.
Yeah. All right. Do we want to refactor this out right now? Or do we want to wait to write the test and then factor it out into a...
Let's finish the test and then see how we want to factor it out.
So we got our snapshot that contains the scoreboard snapshot. So now we can do GameDatabase, saveGame, game snapshot. I have a feeling we're going to want to pull this out. Although, actually not, because we're going to be querying against whatever table gets created for the scoreboard, which offhand I'm not sure what that is. So we're going to select something, I don't know, from something.
Yeah.
I don't know just yet.
Do we know what that is going to be?
Do we get that information? We might, we'll be able to get that. I just don't know what it is right now. And so once we do that, we're going to have a list of objects arrays. And these are our scoreboard rows. And we're going to assert something against it. So scoreboard rows. Let's just start that it has size. So what do we expect the size to be in this case?
Well, I think we can do the contains exactly a thing again, but maybe start out with has size. We should expect it to have, how many things do we put into it? I actually kind of want to put 2 categories in, and then we should see 2 rows come out if my understanding of how Hibernate is going to do this is correct.
So let's do this. This is hand and dice.
That works for me.
Okay. So expect, right, because it's storing this as a row because we already defined that this is
going to be a string.
So we could.
And do we have a? No, it should automatically do this from our game table. Yeah, and you don't know what that name is going to be.
It uses some mechanism of the table that it's in. So it'd be games underscore scoreboard or scoreboards, something like that. When we actually finally add it here, we'll see it.
Go ahead and change the question marks to games underscore scoreboard just as a placeholder. And we'll see where that takes us.
If I could actually spell the damn thing. Okay.
Yeah, Suiji makes a good point that we can probably choose the table name. I don't know if I care what the table name is, but...
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we could always tack on an at column definition if we really cared. Okay, so we got the result list, whatever this will be. This will likely be score category.
Let's start out with a star just so we see how many rows we get back, or so we can see what we get back.
Yeah. Do you want to assert against the number of columns too?
Nope, I think this is good for now.
All right. So this will fail because we haven't added it in yet. So if we want to run it, let's go see. Yeah, so basically the select will be not found. I don't know what it does for that case. Could not extract a result set. Yeah.
And that's because it's not finding the table.
Yep.
Right. So that's good. That's what we would expect.
That's exactly what I was looking for. All right. So now we'll go ahead and add what are we storing here?
So is this going to be a map?
I think it's going to be a map.
A map of strings to strings, right? Where the first string is going to be the score category and the second string is going to be the hand of dice.
And so let's see, we'll need...
Is that scoreboards?
No, I guess this is scoreboard.
Mm-hmm.
So this... I have no idea what it's going to do for that.
Well, we haven't added the getters and setters, right?
Oh, that's true. That would help. So I'm just going to run this test. So let's see, what did it actually create? So...
game table scoreboard.
Huh. Oh, okay. So it grabbed it from the name of the class that it's in.
Yeah. So yeah, let's use an annotation to tell it to use the right, because game table scoreboard is terrible.
Yeah, it is terrible. So I think it's column.
There was a collection table annotation there. Is that what you're looking for?
Let's see. Is that it? I guess it is. So let's see. So that's for a set. I always think the examples...
all this example is if the annotation is missing.
Yeah, I think actually the column is good enough. And so we wanted, what do we say? Games, scoreboards. Let's try that.
Gave us a different error that time.
No, I think it was the same thing.
Oh no, you're right. I didn't realize that it was an inner exception previously.
Okay, so maybe
that
this
didn't work.
Maybe it is cable collection table. Name, catalog, schema, join columns. Maybe it's just collection table. Let's try that. All right, that was it.
Okay, good. Well, sort of good.
Well,
it found the table.
No,
we're not setting
it. That's good. That's now what we're expecting. Yes.
Yeah, because we're not setting the data. I was expecting we'd get 2 back, but we're not setting the data yet. So that's good.
Right. All right. So that's our table. That's that. Okay. So now set scoreboard. Snapshot. Scoreboard.
I want to do as persistable snapshot.scoreboard.
All right.
Because don't we have to do a conversion?
We're going to have to do a conversion. My tendency is I write the code, make it work, and then I refactor. But I'm fine with writing this complex beast up front. No, we don't want that. We want to create a method. Get down enough.
And this just convinced me that you were right about putting this here and not in the value object.
And that's that. And that's that. But actually, we want scoreboard dot the map. Okay, so I want to do something with the map. I want to. Right, because this is right.
And we're gonna have to do a stream and map to convert it.
Yep. We gotta do an entry set, and then we gotta do. I do that. Done it before. This thing collect. Oh, stream, collect, but not to set, map. And so we want entry. And we want to return or yield a, that's the first thing, score category. Get value.
Yeah.
So this is as persistable. That.
First, oh yeah, the key is going to be the same, but the value is going to be the.
Sorry. All right. So this is entry. So the key is our score category, and that's just going to be. Why is it? What am I doing wrong?
Yeah, one of these days I'm going to need to go figure out how this streams interface works in Java. This is new since the last time I worked in Java, which gives you an idea of how long it's been since I've worked in Java.
Entry to map. So what is this expecting?
To map wants 2 functions.
Oh, right, because it wants the function for.
One for the key,
one for the map. All right, that's why. Okay, so this
Thanks,
is.
Luigi.
I always get that confused. So. The key we want. So this is.
So the key should just be the same. It should just be the enum converted to a string.
Yeah, so I can't use the identity. So. Entry. Okay. And then this is value.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need these. And it would help if I returned it. Oh boy. I think that's right.
Yeah, that looks right to me. It's actually reads fairly clean too once you get past the noise.
Just that string collect. So collect a map. So take an entry, we grab the key to convert to string, and convert to, okay. Yep. So that's as persistable. We did that here. That could be static. All right. Store it. Oh my god, it passed.
Ah.
Well, we at least had two
break
rows.
it because I don't trust it. Oh well, the rows. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we should be able to do the comparison to the actual total table.
Yeah. So we can take this out. So it contains exactly the object. So this
just
one,
put a 0 or something like that in there. I would just want to see what's
I can just do
out.
that. So this will fail. We should though see that it should have two objects of the category string pairs, and there they are with the ID.
With an ID. With the same ID each time.
This must be the ID, the foreign key back to the foreign key back to the
and there's no primary key because this is a join table.
Right.
So perfect. So what did they name that? Is there a way for us to get the column names?
Yes, we can go ahead and drop create. So create game scoreboards. So that's game table ID. So that's the foreign key back, scoreboard, and scoreboard key. Those are horrible. We could probably rename those, but
scoreboard key.
So scoreboard is the value, I'm assuming, and this is the key for that map.
Go ahead and can we look at the table, the test failure again?
Yeah. So basically, this is the value, and this is the key.
Okay, that's the key.
Yeah.
So let's rename these columns to be something else.
Boy, now you're really.
Yeah, maybe I don't want to do this. This is going to be too much work.
Let's see.
Oh, you've got a join column.
Join columns. That's the join column. Yeah, I don't know how.
I don't care as much.
There's a way to change it, but it's like I'd have to go look at the documentation.
Yeah. So let's just document it here in our select.
So this is going to be what we say. This is scoreboard.
It'll be game table, scoreboard key, scoreboard value.
Yeah. Do we care about the game table ID? Do we want that? We're asking for that.
Do we care about it?
That means we'd have to know what the ID that got assigned was. In this case, we know it's always 1.
We know it the same way that the previous test knows it, just because that's
true. It is. Yeah. So this is then going to be it's 1, and this is our was and that, and then so this will half work. We'll get 1 missing. Yep.
Good.
Okay.
And if we were doing this mapping ourselves, I would have us write in 2 games. But since Hibernate's doing the mapping, I think just making the assertion that stuff is showing up is good enough. Like it wouldn't mean any additional code for us to put in a second game.
Yeah. Is that the right order? It is. All right.
Okay. Do me a favor. Let's look at these 2 tests side by side and ask ourselves the question, is it cleaner to put these 2 assertions in one test, or do we like having it in 2 separate tests? It is one concept, but at the same time, it's a whole bunch of stuff to put in one test.
I feel like 2 tests is better because this test is really testing sort of how we did this. Did we do this properly? Plus it feels complex enough or complicated enough that once we get rid of a little bit of this noise, I think having 2 tests is better.
Okay. Let's do that then. Let's clean this test up. I would probably, depending on how hard it is to do the builder, I would probably make a helper method called saveGame that abstracted everything from line 63 to 73, if we can do it in a way that also abstracts the same lines in the previous test. So let me show you what I'm thinking real quick.
Go ahead.
Oh boy. Code Together is just taking a long vacation.
Oh no.
Okay, I think, here we go. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Is everything working?
Yes.
So I'm going to use just some pseudocode here. In JavaScript, I would write something like this. What do we got here? How do I get the list of parameters? I thought it was Command P.
It should be Command P.
Yeah, it's not on my computer.
Oh,
what's the first parameter? That is the
first parameter is the number of rolls.
Number of rolls. And the second one is game completed.
Game completed. Yep. Or round completed. Yep.
And then the current hand.
Right.
So that's what I'd write here. And then well, you get the idea. I can no longer type.
Oh no.
But and the second one would just be same thing, except the option, the other values would be eluded, and it would just be, or lighted, and it would just be the scoreboard.
So let's see.
And I think we've done something like this before, and we've just used a builder pattern, right?
Yeah. So let's do this. So
and while you're doing that, I'm going to kill IntelliJ and restart it and see if I can reconnect to your Code Together instance.
Should I do Let's see. So what do we need? Yeah, that'll. It's great.
Can I
Want to
can
grab?
I show you something real quick?
Yep.
So from a developer experience, so I did relaunch IntelliJ, and I think
Okay.
I'm doing okay. So you're gonna call saveGame, you're gonna call these various builder functions on it, and then you're gonna have like a dot execute on the end. Is that what you're thinking here?
Um. Yes. And perhaps even pull this into that. So you get so execute would take this.
I think I would do that separately. Um, there's another way we could do this, and
Okay.
uh,
Yeah, I was thinking of doing the more full one, but since so far we don't have any place where we're specifying the number of roles without specifying anything else, I felt like that was more than we needed right now.
yeah, we could do with core game state. Blah. I just like the way this reads a little bit better, but I'm not particularly wedded to one or the other. The main thing I'm demonstrating here is just a different way of doing the builder, as opposed to having a dot execute at the end. It's basically creating an options object and then passing that in. And the options object would just have a bunch of publics on it because it's just purely for the test.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll leave you to decide which of those you want to do and how you want to do it.
Yeah, if we want to keep this separate, then then the game options is actually nicer because then I don't have to. Then I know when it's done, it gets executed.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, so it's going to be save game builder. That'll be an inner class. Create builder. Save game. What does that return? Actually, it returns. No, I don't think I want that. Hold on. Let's try that. And this is minimize this. So let's see. Game. Figure that out. So game returns options. And this is...
You okay with me fleshing this out while you're working on it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Be interesting to see if that will work.
What am I missing? Oh, so width takes the options. Okay. All right. So then basically... Hey, Whiskey Sierra. Yes, it is Monday already.
Whiskey, good to see you.
So I'll flesh out the width. But I just commented out. Oh dear.
Go ahead.
Undo was not happy with me
Oh, right, because it's
because we're both
colliding.
Yeah. So gotta remember that. So save game. That's gonna need to be.
Oh, I think we're going in different
that?
directions here. I was putting it on options. Oh no, we're fine.
Yeah, I was just gonna pull the game snapshot out of those options.
Yeah.
But what did I lose? Let's see. So I think we're gonna have to say. Somebody's gonna have to pass in the JPA guy. Roles, options, completed, options. You named it hand of dice. I think that one is current hand.
I called it hand of dice, yeah.
Okay.
But you're right, it should be current hand.
So follow that.
And because my commands aren't working, I'm just going to do this the hard way. You know, it's maybe because I don't have code together registered that all my refactorings aren't working.
I don't think so. Are you going to create a default scoreboard?
I'm not sure about that. I've been sort of thinking about that. Do we want it to be a scoreboard snapshot, or do we want it to be the map, and then you create the scoreboard snapshot in the with static method?
Well, the caller, I think, wants to pass a map.
Yeah.
That's easier on the caller.
Yeah, so I think the options just has a map. But the caller is passing a hand of dice, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, let's just have it be a map. And what kind of map is it?
It is a map of score category to hand of dice.
And then here we need to just make an empty collection. Is that in that way?
It's lowercase e for n. It's empty map. But collections is, yeah, I'll import that.
Okay.
So we're gonna have to say the new save game.
Yeah, I agree with you, Fisky. I'm not sure why saveGame needs to be a class at all.
Save game could be non-static. Right, then it could access the database JPA directly. Yeah, we could do that. So used to doing static classes.
But it could also just be a function, right?
I guess the width could be a function.
I mean,
yeah,
the width could be a function, and then we don't need the saveGame class at all.
Right, because we just have the options, right? Mm-hmm. So then this, yeah, we could. That's true. Depends on if we want to add on the execute or not to the save game. So let's see. Yeah. So for this class, we don't want that.
How come line 91 has got the red? Oh. Is it because with is static?
Yes. Although that shouldn't matter. Thought I could. Oh, because it's not static, right? Okay. Yep. That's fine. Yeah, and then in that case, we may as well just call it saveGame. And then get rid of the class.
Sorry, Whiskey. It's a real CSI Miami moment, by the way, with us both typing away on the class at the same time.
All right, so
that should work, right?
That should work. Famous last words. Let's see. What are we missing? Oh, there's the folded code is missing something. What is missing? Line 92. What did I miss? Oh. Right. I didn't finish save game options scoreboard.
Oh, right.
And that's a map. So we need to here.
Yeah.
Yep. There we go. So let me clean that up.
It was the remote version, Suiji.
All right. Let's see what happens now. All right, well, that worked. And then the second one, let's convert. And so this time we're going to use around here. And that's scoreboard. That, and then we don't need all of this. Flawless.
Did it work?
Oh, we got a 2 here.
Why did we get a 2?
Uh,
I mean, we could just not make it. Like, who knows? There's the fact that the ID is a 1 each time is very much a coincidence.
So the sequence is not restarted. So the sequence is getting bumped up. The internal sequence is generating the IDs.
Yeah.
So we could just ignore.
Is that because previously you were only running the one test? Is that why we didn't see this fail previously?
No, I had run both tests before.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It doesn't bother me. Like, I'm fine not asserting on the ID. That actually seems like the smart thing to do, but it bothers me that this is failing now and didn't fail before. Like, what are we doing differently? Are we saving twice? No.
Saving here. And we're saving here.
Yeah, Suiji says maybe you never ran both tests. That seems like the most likely explanation for me.
Pretty sure I did, but I've been wrong before.
Go to the tape. But let's run the second test on its own, and if that works, let's just take the ID out.
Yeah. It's possible once we started asserting against IDs here that I was not running both. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
So let's just take the game table ID out. Yeah, that's it. And that actually makes sense. That it's going to use every time it's basically it's just running starting the tests from scratch at the beginning of the test run, starting the database from scratch, and then it's incrementing as it goes through.
Yeah.
Let's take it out of the first one too.
Yeah, and I was about to do that too, because even there, it's who knows when it gets run, and it's not actually relevant.
And that behavior could change out from under us,
right,
and it's
exactly.
really not anything we have control over. It bugs me slightly that there's a column that is part of this code that we're not asserting against, but Although, actually, for the join table, we really do need to assert that we have the correct ID. So we need to write another assertion that pulls out the ID from the games table, and then we assert that we get the correct ID on line 71.
So do we want to write that as part of this test?
Yeah, can I give it a shot?
Oh, yeah.
So I think what we're looking at can you inline that query for me?
You want me to say again?
Inline 65.
Inline?
Mm-hmm.
Like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is going to be the game ID. This would be what? ID from games.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to have an int, which is the game ID equals game rows 0. Actually, how do we get the first one off of there?
Dot get 0. And then, fun mixing.
What'd you say?
I said it's fun mixing those syntaxes.
Yeah. I'm getting a syntax error on this. What's the problem?
Because you said int when it's actually an object. So you could say integer. And it's actually going to be a big integer anyway. So big integer, and it was dot value of. Oh, is that gonna work right? Will it do the right thing?
Like that?
I think so. It thinks it's. You might have to cast it too long.
I can't hear you.
You might have to cast it. Why did that work before? Hold on. Oh, we took it out.
How did we do that before?
Yeah, so we could just do long.
Right.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Actually, we just need to cast it as a big integer.
Right. That makes more sense.
My bad.
Well, while you're doing that, I'm going to put game ID in here and in here.
Yep.
Okay. Is that going to work? Did I do that right?
That looks right. Whether it works is a separate issue. Big integer cannot be cast to... Wait, what? Oh, I think the cast is around the wrong thing. Is the cast around the wrong thing?
You think it's just casting the wrong thing? Is that what we need to do?
I don't... Get 0 gets the first item. Then we get the first column.
Class. Big integer cannot be classed to class. Honestly, does it matter?
Oh, it's just an object, so yeah, actually it doesn't matter.
Yeah, because to us it's opaque.
Yeah.
Try that.
Get 0. Gets the object array, and that gets 0. I think actually this is is this the problem? I'm confused. No, it's saying line 68. What? Big integer cannot be cast to object? Hold on a second.
Oh, Whiskey's saying maybe because we only selected one thing, maybe we're not getting an array. But no, then we'd be getting an error. Yeah, that's weird.
It is an untyped list. You could be right. Could be that. I mean, if not, we'll get a different error.
Okay,
well,
so
now we get
oh, well, we took the ID, so that did work. Look at our...
Yes. Now we right. We took the ID out of here, which is why it's not matching. Okay, so I guess it is not this.
It's just
that.
Object.
Okay.
Wow, you know how much I hate that? I hate that in all the ways it can be hated, because it's returning a different type depending on how many columns we're asking for.
That's awful.
It's truly awful.
That's terrible. I agree. That's is that true? That's terrible.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Oh, no. Actually, it is an object array. It's a list of... I'm confused by what it thinks this is.
I am too.
Because it thinks it thinks it's this, which technically are both assignable.
Right. Well, run that again. Let's see what happens. When we run it again, if it doesn't match up, we'll find out.
Yeah, so that can't work because this can't be an object array. This has to be an object. So
what's the error we're getting here?
So here it's basically can't
And cast it to an array of object.
Yeah. So basically,
because it's just a big integer.
It's because we can't class. So what this is saying, I missed the bracket. We can't cast an object array to big integer, which totally makes sense.
Right.
So if we said big integer, and then did that.
No, that's what we had before.
Right. Now it's going to complain because it can't cast. It can't pull. It couldn't pull an object array out of the list because that wasn't its type. Yeah, so when it tried to pull it out of the list, it couldn't cast it to an array of object. And so if we did this, and then this, we're saying now that would be okay.
Column ID does not exist. Oh, it's because it's game ID. This is on line 71.
Oh, right.
Game table ID, Suiji says, and they're right.
Oh, is it games or is it game?
It's games.
Game.
Yeah. Game.
We could define the join column, but that's fine. Yeah, this is pretty awful. This interface, or the type that this returns is pretty terrible.
Yeah, no, because it is returning on line 70, it's returning a list of arrays. And on line 65, it's returning a list of...
Yeah, just because it happens to know it's too smart for its own good, or it's too smart for...
Yeah, somebody wrote code to make this abomination work. Like, they had to write code saying how many
columns did we get? Did we return this kind or this kind? That's just terrible.
Yeah. I think they tried to make it be more convenient. Like if you only select one thing, then you just get the thing back that you want.
Yeah, clearly. But
I'm not defending it.
But that does not, but that definitely doesn't play well with the erasure of the generics, as Suiji just says. Yeah. Oh, that's terrible.
Well, let's take our second break.
Yeah.
Wash the taste of this awful interface out of our mouth. And then when we get back, I think what I'd like to do is these lines that we have on line 65 and then 70, I want to extract that out into a simple little execute query helper function.
Yep. All right. We'll be back. All right. And we're back.
All right. Today on API Disaster Theater.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I don't even know what to say.
What can you say? So I did change it to this per Whiskey Sierra's suggestion so that we don't have to do the cast here.
Well, what I was thinking that we should probably do, and if you feel like we're just moving deck chairs on the Titanic, we can move on to doing the... So what we have to do next, the major next thing we have to do is doing the loading.
Right.
I think the save is done.
Yeah.
But I do like to clean up my tests after I've sort of gotten them working, and I try to make them nice and compact, super readable. I think we're almost there. The one thing I think we're missing here is that if I can just do a little pseudocode, is something along the lines of just execute query.
So Kademlia says create native supports a class param. It does support a class param, but the problem is you can't. There's no way to specify the generified type of that list, which is what the problem is. So you can actually pass in a class if you wanted to map it to do the mapping for us, but we actually don't want to do that because that just wraps something around it that I don't think we need.
So anyway, line 73 is basically what I'm imagining here. That would probably have to be cast like that. Am I correct in that?
Um,
Or we could do it. No, actually, we could probably do it like that.
I don't know that you can.
Actually, no, that will always be a list of objects. So no, we can just do that.
Well, it's always a list of objects. We would still, in this case, we would have to cast to the list of object array.
Right, but I'm saying that we can write execute query to always return a list of objects.
Yes, yes.
And the casting, and actually we wouldn't have to do any casting because that's what create native query returns. And then when we're doing the assert, we are just comparing to that list, so that works fine as well. The only time when you have to do manual casting is in situations like line 68, which I think is fine.
Yeah. Someone mentioned earlier saveGame could return the ID, but that assumes that you're only saving one game, which is true for now. So,
but I don't think from a production code perspective, there's any point at which we want people to do anything with that saveGame.
Yeah.
No, actually, no. Yeah. I think we should hold off on that. There's going to be a question in the future about how do we support multiple games.
Right.
But there is this sort of principle of don't expose your primary keys in your user interface. Mm-hmm. So I don't think we'd want to return the ID at that point.
Right.
We actually return some sort of GUID or something like that for the game.
Yep. All right. Where did my cursor go? Oh, there it is.
So you want to do that refactoring, factor out that execute query method?
So I was trying to figure out what we were doing here. Okay. No. Okay. No.
I do like your trick here of the way you refactor this.
See, what's nice is what it just is. It just captured this other one.
Yeah.
For us, it's great.
Yeah, that is great.
And then did not capture this one. Why didn't I? Oh, because I didn't inline that. All right.
Right.
I'm gonna undo what I just did.
Oh, you're not going to be able to.
Oh,
sorry. I made changes, and so you're going to get my.
All right. Let me just finish. Then I'll call just execute.
That's not so bad.
I'll do it the hard way.
The magic is very cool. Like this is magic. That's magic I appreciate because it's not code we have to call.
Right.
And it is very cool the way it recognizes that. I will totally give them credit for that. How does IntelliJ know that create native query is SQL and formatted accordingly? I think we just coded that.
Yeah, it didn't do any. Well, okay, no, IntelliJ is smart. It no longer highlights this. Before it was complaining about games. So in the IntelliJ Ultimate Edition does so much stuff behind the scenes that it was actually aware that when we were calling so Suiji's right, when we were calling create native query directly with a constant string, a string literal, it introspected that string
and recognized that we had a games table that didn't exist.
Didn't exist, although it should have. It's almost too smart for its own good, or not smart enough. It's like in this middle because it is called games and it should know that. But anyway, but yes, it did through language injection. It does know that it was SQL.
But as soon as we made it a string parameter, it was not able to discover.
Right. It doesn't. And what's interesting is they could do that because they have a lot of data flow analysis. Like they could figure out this calls this thing, and it has knowledge about this the target site, and it could track that through. But
yeah, it could have sort of a pseudo type on it saying that this isn't just a string, this is a database string.
Yeah,
but yeah,
but no.
Okay, so this all should still work, right?
So if we return an ungenerified list, then this all should work. So let's try that. And I'm fine with that.
Do we want to, I don't know if we want to open this can of worms, but, and now that we know what's going on, it's actually kind of handy, but scroll up just a little bit. Do we want to, so on line 64, we're returning a list of big integer. On line 67, we're returning a list of object. Do we want to have execute query unscrew up the create native query and always return the same thing? I think I'm fine with it the way it is.
I'd be tempted to just for sanity, for future sanity, but right now I'm not quite sure which way I'd want to go. Like, we do
occasionally. Like we'd have to go with the more generic approach. Either we could make two methods, one which is execute multi-column query and execute one-column query, which would just call the same underlying code.
Right.
Let's just leave it like it is.
I think it's sufficient. I
think it's time to get off the Titanic and actually start doing the next feature. We should probably check this in.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and run.
Oh, but wait, before you do that, that class you were just looking at, that probably should be private. Save game option should probably be private.
It should also be private.
And what is this complaining about?
That's probably my stuff. Let's see. What did it not? What failed there? Oh, it's because, okay, so I can go fix that. That was the... Pretty sure this is the problem.
Oh, this is just...
Yeah. Yeah, that was the problem.
What are your thoughts about Kademlia's comment?
I'm gonna have to look at that. Hold on, I erased the other test that was failing. Oops, dang it. Zoom. That's not the one I care about. That's what I care about. Okay. So Kademlia was saying on line 67. So this.
Yeah, I didn't get that. I think we're okay with the way it is, though, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure what else we changed to. Okay, so we're all good. This one's failing just because the yacht tracker is not running.
Okay.
Oops, wrong button. So what do we do here? We
added support for saving the scoreboard.
Yep.
Yep.
Anything else you'd like to say?
No, I think that's good enough.
All right. All right.
That test that's failing, that post to assign category succeeds, that Do you want to take a moment to fix that? Because now that we have the nullables, it shouldn't need the database to be running.
Let's see. Dang it, I lost which one was. So this one, why is this one failing? Because it's doing an assign role. I'm not sure how to fix this.
That's probably a bigger conversation because what we need to do is inject a null version of the game service, right? A nulled version of the game service.
Yeah, so we could we'd have to go all the way to some Spring configuration in order to do that. Yeah, test configuration, like Suiji mentions.
I so do not want to do that.
I might take that as a to do offline.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's now that we have the nullable games.
Yeah, that's kind of annoying.
It should be able to inject a nulled game and have it not complain, but yeah, that requires mucking around with Spring details, and I'd really rather I'm having my fill with Hibernate.
It's not hard, but it's not important.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so we've got about half an hour left in our stream, and we've finished the saving, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So now what we need to do is the loading.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how you'd prefer to do this. If you'd like to do these in the same tests, in the same test file, or in a separate test file. Yeah, Whiskey, that's exactly what I'm thinking.
I'm fine with it in this class. This test class is currently just GameDatabase test, and reads and writes in there are fine.
Yeah,
I think that makes sense.
So yeah, let's make a new one saying that it loads the game state or core game state. And I think we'll just have 2 tests again. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to write a database table.
So we're going to have to do an insert. So we're going to do an insert into games. And then we're going to do a game database load game.
Mm-hmm. And we'll need to pass in the
something like that.
We'll need to pass in the primary key.
Right. So how about find ID? Any preference for this name? I'm just using the.
I like loadGame, saveGame, and loadGame. I think is a nice. And this primary key is really temporary because once we do start officially supporting multiple games, we're going to want to have some sort of GUID.
Yeah. I mean, right now, yeah.
You know, I know you said doing multiple games was a separate feature, but I feel like just supporting that with a GUID right now would be simpler. What's your thinking on that?
I don't know that it would be simpler because we say load game and let's see, would it be simpler? Would it be the same? Yeah, actually, it's about the same.
Yeah,
at this level. Yeah.
Yeah, let's just pass in the primary key for now.
All right. And then okay. So that's our flow.
Yeah, that works for me.
So
we can just call execute query.
Returns a list. What happens? What does it return then?
We care about the return value.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what it does, but yeah, we could call that. So execute query. And we're going to say, we're going to hard code. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the syntax.
Me too.
But also, we're going to hard code the ID here. Well, we're hard coding every. We can't. We can't. Why not?
Because it's because we don't know what. I mean, I guess we could put it like.
I mean, we can query from the. We know what the sequence is. We could query from the sequence, grab that ID, but the ID is. I mean, we can give it a unique. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about the ID.
Well, let's just execute it with the columns and the values and leave the ID out and see what happens.
Okay.
Maya?
Yep. So it's games.
And then what are the columns that we're... Oh, yeah. Could we use one of the insert intos from our existing test? Yes, we probably could.
If we had tests, let me go.
Here, I got it from our log.
Oops.
Current hand rolls round completed ID. I'm going to leave the ID out. And the values of, we don't really need, we can just hard code this. Current hand is going to be what? I don't remember the syntax for hard coding a string. It's just with quotes, right?
I think it's just with quotes. You could probably, can we use single quotes?
I don't know. I always use prepared statements because that's...
I mean, we can, I mean, the execute query stuff does allow you to specify some and prepare things, but
I mean, there's no reason not to just hard code it.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. And then the rolls is going to be 3. The round completed is going to be true.
Right. Yeah, single quotes are fine.
Yeah. And let's go ahead and pull that back out and just see what we get. I could do it. Oops.
Would be contains exactly.
Okay. What does that give us?
Let's see.
Yeah, whiskey's probably right.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Well, also the ID can't be null.
Okay. So let me try putting that in. Also, the fact that this is in a weird order is bugging me. Okay. We still need to run a different, we need to run execute update instead of get result list, but yeah, Suiji, that was my thought, is that it would be an auto-incrementing primary key, but apparently not.
It's not. In this case, Hibernate creates a separate sequence that it deals with. So we can see that getting created all the way. somewhere over here. Yeah, so basically creates a sequence from here.
Yeah.
And then when it does the insert by itself, it pulls from that sequence.
Okay, so I'm going to just pull this code out for now. And that can be execute update. Okay, give that a shot.
All right. Yep, that's right, Whiskas here.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, so that worked perfectly.
As expected.
Yeah. I just want to fix this up a little bit because I think we had roles first. Then I know it doesn't really matter, but
Oh, it matters. Maybe not to the computer.
it matters. It does matter. I agree.
But it does matter.
Read true.
See there, do you notice it's highlighting it? Like it went orange.
Yeah, that is cool.
And these are actually different colors here. I'm not sure how much you can see that. But these are
not on my machine, but on yours it is.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay. So do you want to take it from here or should I keep going?
I can take it from here. So so we don't want that. We're not executing the query anymore. So we did the insert. So now we want to do this. And we need our game database.
That should be.
Yep. And then we'll go shrink this back down. This method. We'll leave that as null for a second. We'll insert that and we'll call this loadGame.
That's not game. That should be a game snapshot.
You're right. Thank you. And so we expect this to be equal to game snapshot. So roles, what did we say that was? 3 through. And then hand dice that. Whoops.
Yes, we have a hand of dice dot of and a hand of dice dot from. What's the difference between those?
Of is basically created with these literals. From does a from a list, I guess.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, and this, I guess, scoreboard is null. Well, I guess that's how we'll define it. Okay. Okay.
Thank you. That was bugging me.
We'll do that too.
I'd probably put values on this third line rather than the second.
Okay, so 3 true that, 3 true that, no. Okay, and this will most certainly fail because we're not doing anything.
should fail with.
Well, we'll just get a null back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So now we can do.
We really should be doing this one at a time, but that's all right. Yeah, so this can be a new game.snapshot. Oh wait.
Well, we need to go to our database, and this is find by ID. Game.
Is that GameDatabase JPA, or is it game table? Oh no, you're right.
Game table would be the thing we persist or get out, and so here we're going to find it by ID. This is going to give us an optional of game table.
Perfect. Okay.
And this is. And I'm going to dereference it right away. And we'll just say or else throw. And actually, we could just return that. No, we can't return it. Now we take it and we go. Gotta go the other way. So we return a new game snapshot, game table. Game table. This is hand.
That's going to be a string.
And that's going to be a string. So here we're going to have to reverse it.
Yeah, let's just make it null to start out with.
Yeah.
And
actually,
see that we've got it working this much.
Yeah.
That's what I meant when I said we're asserting too much.
Yeah. And then, no.
But
this is going to be what? No. So we'll expect it to be good for the 3 and the true, and then the rest will be null.
Yeah.
Yep. So rolls 3, and that. Great.
Okay.
So now.
From persistable?
Sure. And this is game table. Create hand. Create method.
It's going to be from persistable hand because we're not going to be able to distinguish between.
So let's see.
So we need to split the string on the commas.
Yeah, so split.
Does that give us an array?
That will give us an array.
In that case, we can just say hand of dice dot from on that. We don't need to stream it.
But it gives us an array of string. So we need to map it. We need to do an integer value of, and then we can do a to list.
Right.
And then we can of all that. That's our integers, and we can return and dice from that list.
Yeah. So that should now give us a correct hand of dice.
Yes. In fact, the test will pass because we're saying null here and we're doing null here.
Right.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, this is moving along smoothly. Can we have the as persistibles be symmetrical, so as persistable hand rather than, and maybe even to persistable hand?
Yeah,
I loved as persistible.
Yeah, but if we're going to say from and to,
antonym is.
Yeah. Okay.
And then our other scoreboard got renamed as well. On line 35.
Um, sorry, what got?
Uh, I'll fix it.
Yeah.
It's just when you did the rename, it was a little too smart.
Oh, did I blow past something that I shouldn't have? Oh,
I don't know.
yeah. Yeah.
Did I break something? No.
No, you just fixed it. Yeah, I like
So,
as reads better in context.
yeah.
Um,
No, I think you're right. It doesn't need to be perfect.
yeah.
I got it.
All right. Test should still pass. All right. Do we want to do one more test?
Yeah, we've got time. These tests are for later. We
Okay.
should do loads
Scoreboard.
load snap scoreboard state.
All right. So we're gonna do. Oh, we're gonna do something like this. So that'll insert into games. And then
For this one, I wonder if just doing it all in one test might make more sense. Yeah. Again, I think it's kind of the same thing as before.
yeah, it depends on uh how we might refactor the SQL stuff, if at all.
Yeah.
Um,
That's going to be a little trickier because it's we're going to be doing a lot of corrupted data next. And so I don't think there's going to be quite the same level of abstraction available to us that there was
Okay.
for the saving.
So this is and then we're going to need to insert into scoreboard.
Yeah, Whiskey, that makes sense.
So we're going to insert into, what do we call it?
Game table.
Game
Oh,
scoreboard.
game scoreboard.
Yeah.
You got it.
And that. And values. Let's see that. And so what have we got? We then got scoreboard key, which is fines. And
That's a good score.
that's a great score. All right. And then we'll manager query that execute. So that'll be the same, but then we'll insert. Yeah.
Let me do a little bit more.
Okay. Okay, insert another scoreboard.
Yeah.
Yep.
Should we do fours?
Sure. All right.
Oh, that's a good point, Whiskey.
Yeah, I so rarely write SQL straight up.
I'll admit I'm not sure what that syntax would be. So let's just run with it.
Yeah, Whiskey, if you want to provide the syntax, you can go for it. Otherwise, we're gonna just keep going. All right. So we got the loadGame snapshot here. We're gonna assert that the loadGame snapshot. In this case, the scoreboard is equal to scoreboard snapshot map of. So this is going to be 5s and that, and then 4s, and then that.
I'll catch that after we get this test working, Whiskey.
Oh, whoops.
Right, of course. I should have caught that.
Okay. Oh, whoops. Stop. Running a run test. Okay.
Okay.
That is as expected. Yes. Right.
So now just from persistable scoreboard. So we need to convert, we need to map it to an enum and a hand of dice, correct?
Yes.
So we'll get an entry set, stream it, collect it to a map.
Yep. Not to that. Map. And then we got
entry to an entry dot get key. Well, no, how do we make an enum?
We want the enum, which is a score category.
Mm-hmm.
Value of entry dot get key. And
then the next one is going to be an entry to from persistible hand,
right,
of that. From persisted scoreboard. Oh, yeah. I like that too. Let's get this working first, and then we've got a little bit of cleanup to do with the SQL and that.
whoops.
Do we have to?
That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to assign that to the map, and then it's a new snapshot with that map.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Whoops. Oh, look at that.
Beautiful. Okay, let me do a little bit of cleanup to our SQL based on what our folks were saying. That's why we want the values here. Okay, that still pass?
What
if
happened?
I put the syntax correct?
Oh, now it's good. Is that right? Oh, because now the variable name is just one. Okay.
You got it.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay.
Looks good.
Did I break anything?
Let me run all the tests.
And then Suiji suggested from persisted scoreboard, which I like a lot.
Whoops. What happened?
Did we break something?
Sort of.
The table doesn't exist.
So no, here we were asserting null, but now we're basically getting an empty scoreboard map.
Which is fine.
Which is fine, yeah. So this is a new snapshot empty map. So now that should pass. All right, so now that passes. Do we want to do that rename that Suiji suggested?
Yeah, I like that.
So this is... Whoops. Persistent bed.
Sure, we can do that too.
That's new English. I should know better. It has Ted in it.
All right. So yeah, I think if all our tests pass, we can check in and then do our debrief.
All right, that all looks good. Run all our tests. Just
yeah. So we've added loading of games. So all we have left now. Do you want to put down what we need to do next?
Yep. Actually, I'm gonna put that in the. Oh, already committed it. Yeah. I can amend it. Yeah. So let's see.
You didn't push that, did you?
I did not push that.
Okay. Yeah. So next time we need to do corrupted data. So load corrupted data. Or test loading corrupted data. And we need to make it nullable.
All right.
And that will probably be enough to keep us busy next time.
Oh, sorry, Suiji. I should re-enable that. Oops.
Okay, we're pretty much out of time, but I want to take a few minutes to debrief. What are your thoughts based on what we've done today?
Yeah, I mean, this is I mean, if we need this kind of thing, then this is exactly the way, or similar to the way I'd be doing it. So really straightforward.
Yeah, pretty clean.
Yeah.
We haven't factored out the loading stuff yet, but I think we'll do that once we get into the corrupted data. We'll get a better sense of what we need there.
Yeah.
I'm really happy with the way the save stuff turned out. I think the abstractions we created there in the test are really nice and clean. I like the way we did the design for the game database.
Mm-hmm.
I like the from persistent scoreboard and as persisted scoreboard.
Yep.
And this code is pretty tight. I know you ended up splitting it out into multiple files, and maybe next time we can look into what the difference between the design is, because I know we're using the same underlying mechanism, but it seems like the code is different somehow. I'm not entirely sure how.
Yeah, we can look at that. I don't remember what it was anymore. Yeah, I mean, the only difference I might do is is pull out these from and as into a separate thing and test those more directly.
But we're testing them.
But we were
indirectly.
we were testing them indirectly. It sort of depends, because we're directly writing it, we sort of know exactly what we're going to get, and that made writing some of that easier.
Yeah. I think the point at which I would pull those out into a separate file, separate class, is when the logic starts getting complicated, like when there's different results that can come back based on different scenarios. Right now, it's a pretty straightforward mapping.
For me, this is getting easier because we've been doing it more. But I'd be writing a test for this because it's to me it's just error prone for an amateur stream mapper. It's
very verbose, but really it's just line 60 and 61 is all that's happening here.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, two very simple mappings. Yeah. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. The first time you wrote one of these, I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
But now that I understand it's just Java being Java, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I like the save game options. That turned out to be quite nice.
Yeah, that was pretty clean.
This kind of bugs me, only because it's a little messy.
It's a little messy. How would you do it differently?
There are two ways I do it. One is I'd write basically a new assertion.
Assert game persistence is, or something like that.
Okay, be quiet, Siri. So something like asserting directly against this, or perhaps asserting. I don't know that I'd assert directly against the query, but I'd assert against this directly.
Yeah. If we had a lot more tests, I think it would make sense to write something like assert game table is, and then blap, or assert game scoreboard table is. But since we're really only doing, I think those two safe tests we have are all that we've got. I don't know that it adds a lot of value in this case.
Yeah. So Whiskey Sierra says, can you try @index plus contains exactly?
So do it, rather than do it in one assertion, do it in two assertions. I like that doing it this way means that we know we only have exactly two rows.
Yeah, and that's rows in this order.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think you could probably play around with some of the other methods that assert that offers. That's sort of playing at the edges, I think, though. I mean, it doesn't bug me that much.
Yeah. And again, we could do something like assert table equals that just basically takes the var args.
The real problem is this list of object array. That's just really awkward in general. And I'd probably create an execute query that made that a bit nicer. Or basically did what the assert J table stuff did, and maybe convert.
Yeah, that was really nice. I was sorry to see that go.
Yeah.
When we switched over to execute native query.
Yeah, I have to look closer to see if there's a way to go one level deeper and start accessing the assertions. But it looks like it's doing stuff against the data source directly. But there might be something there.
Yeah. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with this.
Yeah.
I agree with you. If you're going to do it this way, this is about as clean as it gets. If you're and I still do like the fact that, I mean, it's not so much of an issue, and maybe this is why we had a difference of opinion last time about whether or not it's appropriate to go down to this low level. If we're doing basically the as persistable hand from persistence, if we're doing that in a different part of the system, like in the value objects, you really need these tests that we have on the left, because those can change and break your persistence without you realizing it.
Right.
Given the way we've designed this, if we're treating the database as a black box, I think just doing a simple does it save and load back the same thing is good enough.
Yeah.
But it still makes me feel good being able to look at this in the future and say, how does our database work?
Right.
And we see, there's this game table row or game table a scoreboard thing, which is
Right.
a really screwy name for game table ID, whatever the name was. Game Scoreboard turned out okay, but game table ID. It's
Well,
nice. I
yeah,
really like the documentation of that.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
No, it's the scoreboard key, scoreboard. Yeah, that.
Yeah. What is that even? Right. But
but what's nice about that is if I decided, you know what, this really annoys me, we have a test that says this is what I want it to be, and then you could almost just start futzing around with the annotations until you get it right.
Yeah.
And you'd be sure
that's
that
the
like,
incantation part. Are we incanting correctly to make the magic work the way we want?
Yeah.
Which is a lot like old school stories about magic, right? You're going to summon a demon. You're going to want to make sure you get it exactly right, because otherwise the demon will bite your head off.
Yeah. Or you'll summon a lemon accidentally instead of a demon.
You'll summon a lemon, right?
Oh, that was
Who was that? Was that Suiji who gave us that? That was such a great cartoon comic.
Yeah. So that was actually fun.
Yeah, it went so much smoother this time.
Yeah,
it was so much more pleasant than futzing around with JPA.
Yeah, it was that big wall. Once we got over that wall, then we were free to run.
And then, of course, you do this once, and then what we would start to do, assuming we had a much larger project,
right,
we would start factoring out a whole set of helpers.
Yeah,
like we've started down that road, and so it doesn't doing this low level sort of testing. This is very similar to my experience doing this sort of thing in other projects, in that it's a pain in the butt. Then you figure it out, and then it goes pretty smoothly, and it's really not that much worse than doing it at not quite such a low level.
Yep. Cool.
Alrighty. Well, thank you once again, Ted, for hosting and for figuring stuff out in advance off stream.
Yep.
And I guess we'll see you all.
Yeah, and thanks to our viewers for helping us out. It's always appreciated.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to have you all participating. So thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. See you next time.